Ladies and gentlemen, this evening I have the pleasure to share with you some selections from my book, The Heart of Giordano Bruno. Now, Giordano Bruno was a contemporary of Shakespeare, and the subtitle of my book is New Poems Interpreting Highlights of his book, The Heroic Enthusiasms. Now, the heroic enthusiasms are those of lovers, and like Shakespeare, Bruno wrote love poems, and plenty of them. They're more mystical sometimes, but not always. Sometimes you get the feeling these could just as well be from the Shakespeare love affairs. However, let's remember always that a love poet in a cycle of love poems is a fictive personality, and that it's quite possible that there are many differences between Bruno and his speaker. Bruno, for example, was an ordained Catholic priest, pledged thereby to celibacy, and yet he writes here from the point of view of lovers who have what he calls heroic enthusiasms. Falling in love, from Bruno's point of view, is very much like being converted to the worship of the true God, who is the God of love that created the world, where people like us are now in love. So anyway, he is contemporary with Shakespeare, and he even lectured, Bruno did, in England, and probably Shakespeare heard him talk because there's a character named Brown, B-E-R-O-W-N-E, sounds very much like Brown, which is the meaning of Bruno in Shakespeare's Love's Labour's Lost, and the connection, very interesting, has been explored by scholars. So what I did in this book is I have presented not translations of Bruno's heroic enthusiasms poems, but rather I have concentrated on the highlights, both of the poems and of the philosophic replies that he wrote, because he wanted not only to be regarded as a major sonnet writer, but as the best philosopher of the theosopher, if you like, since his world is very God-centered, of love. So a really fine poet. Here in this wonderfully designed cover, he has a kind of towering stature, as if he is a spiritual hero, and in fact, I regard him as one of the great spiritual heroes, although, in fact, my feeling was not shared by everybody at the time, and as a result, Bruno was executed by the Roman Inquisition in the year 1600. He was burned alive upside down, and his body was divided into 4 pieces, plus the head, and these were posted in various locales as cautionary emblems. Now, what did he teach that was so radical? He was, after all, being inquisited, if that's the word, for his heretical teaching. The one cited most often at the trial, the most offensive doctrine, was that of the multiplicity of worlds, the same thing that Galileo taught. The idea that there are infinite numbers of stars and each one has who knows how many planets around it, and we are not the center of the universe. But the church authorities in Rome at the time did not want to give up the idea that somehow the stars were nothing but spangles pasted on the inside of a beach ball, and that we were inside that ball, and we were moreover the center of it, and our world was the only world. Anyway, he did have an egregious fate, but he doesn't deal with that in this book, and I don't deal with it either. The fact is that he can be read with every bit as much pleasure as can the sonnets of Shakespeare, which I have translated and commented upon. Let me get you into the flow of the book. That's the simplest thing. Just begin as an attempt to show you what your experience of this book will be like if you read it. I don't want, for example, to outline the plot, because the plot is very suspenseful, and it has its LGBTQ aspect, and the double surprise at the end is a most remarkable thing. But I want you to buy the book, so I'm just going to not look ahead, but start at the beginning and show you how it goes and how it flows. Let's begin with Sonnet 1, called Crown. This is an ingenious and entertaining idea. Bruno has the idea that we shouldn't just give laurel crowns to poets, laurels sacred to Apollo, or myrtle wreaths, myrtle sacred to Venus. Those are very worthy, but all kinds of other people have various special perfections and might merit crowns of other kinds. Wreaths, that is to say, such as one gives at the Olympics. And indeed, there was a poetic part of the Olympics. Let's read the poem Crowns, and then I'll read my reply. So all of these poems are written by me, but they are an attempt to capture first highlights from Bruno and then to respond to them in a way he would have enjoyed. They go astray who guide their verse by Grecian rule. Yes, olden folk were wise in wreathing myrtle for the poets who'd the beauty of the truth adore, and laurel for the ones in valor's vigor school. So Venus will be served, and Mars beheld in awe, but vine-leaf crowns will give to those that laud white wine, and wreaths of ivy for the Bacchus, bards divine, and olive for the lords of sacrifice and law. For bards in field, wreathe leaves of poplar, elm, and wheat. A cypress crown at funerary obsequies. Your many moods enjoy and relish when you greet. Adorn yourself with varied branch and plant, I say, and offer each new feeling in an altered way. The muses will encourage this, whom passions please. The muses, the goddesses of the cultural arts, including poetry. Here's my reply. A lesson is the COVID era teaching me. With tech invention, loneliness we're vanquishing. In virtual recital, I a poem sing, and hearers offer comment in a colloquy. I've done it many times, and now to mind, I bet replies in lines will rise for what your poems tell. Your scattered gems I relish, entering their spell, I ask pure midwife aid, more music to beget. What kind of wreath for this may I aspire to win? No sooner is the question posed, then I begin to see in mental dream what's happening outside. The falling leaves will an October crown provide. I'll never age with grace. Far rather would I be the emblemizer of a way to age flamboyantly. Flamboy is French for a torch. The colors of the fall leaves around where I live in upstate New York, in Vestal, right near Binghamton, often are blazing triumphs of fiery glory. So you can make my wreath or crown, if you wish to, out of October leaves. Sonnet number 2, Mountain. A poet might have thought he must a mountain climb, but my Parnassus, perfect heart-love waked within, each muse a bounteous trait of her. I here begin. My tears are Helicon, the fountain paradigm. 2 summits of my holy mountain you can see, their love and hate. My faithful heart is at their base. The double nature of my passion will I face when picturing the scene in its entirety. My heart and thought and tears, my love and fear and hope have crowned me, not a king, nor emperor, nor pope. The mountain, in ascending, meant to emblemize emotion unsubsiding, will delight the eyes. The muses every hour new grace may let appear. Poetic Helicon transcends the lathing tear. As a bit of love psychology, that is remarkable, because he says that his mountain of love, like the mountain where the gods dwell, well, that mountain is actually two peaks combined, and one is hate and the other is love. They're very close to each other. He understands the deep kinship between the two. I'll talk about that now. Twin peaks on your Parnassus. Need I be surprised? Mosaic revelation, so the Bible claims, shone on Mount Sinai or Mount Horeb. Different names for one great height, or are they two? I am advised by what you've written, friend Giordano, to reply, and both alternatives are right, for they are one. The law of love is double, bright and clouded sun, for plight and pleasure come from what we view on high. When love seems unreciprocated, weakened trust may turn our gaze from radiance to threshold dust. A deeper confidence we best would cultivate, preventing love from transmutation into hate. The latter sadly comes from fear disguised in pride. But two may one become when these are cast aside. Well, that's very central to thinking about love. Awareness of the speed with which it can, in impulsive emotional natures, and we all have them, I think, deep down, love can turn into hate. Because when you've invested a tremendous amount of amorous energy in someone, and then they somehow disappoint you, sometimes in a quite calamitous way, all the hate suddenly turns into love turns into the most vicious kind of hate. I mean, that can happen. You read about it in the papers every day. There's a murder followed immediately by a suicide because the person hates himself for having invested so much in the person he or she loves. This could be one of the explanations for it. Anyway, enough about speculations of my own. Let's proceed to Sonnet 3. Fire. A captain is the will, mere human metaphor. Commander, apt but harried, cannot quell the men who dare to break the rules or question them, and then slam shut the seeming open paradisal door. For love works not by law, no rebel will subdue. Our emblematic guide must elemental be. A fire is love, and the beloved whom you see embodies that which can consume the total you. The trumpet call of fixed resolve won't stifle strife. One beauty, arrow, face, and fire, and paradise. The unities don't battle, rather they converge, as fire with what it must confront at once will merge. There is a quiet peace in blending unities that put an end to war and lend the spirit ease. Reply. One beauty, arrow, face, and fire, and paradise, the lover contemplating them is wholly smitten. One should surrender, as religious bards have written. Let heart make room for godly fire, is fine advice. We fall in love, we fall. Don't muster up a charge. The will to wage a battle helps you not at all. On dedication, on devotion must one call. Capacity for depth of empathy enlarge. In place of strategy for conquest, we prepare for being vulnerable. Wound we'll have to bear if expectations fail, and if the heart is faint. The life of love will try the patience of a saint. Respect will fortitude support. We're not consumed in passion fire, when by a higher light illumined. Quite characteristically, the more intense his love affair grows, the more he calls on God for ultimate help. Have you noticed the rhythm? One beauty, arrow, face, and fire, and paradise, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. He loves the 6-beat sonnet form, as Shakespeare preferred the 5. And now, here's one called Fourfold. Love, fate, love's object, jealousy, with these we cope. Love and its object to the lover wondrous are. Fate, as our destiny, from passion can't stray far. Can jealousy, whose ground is love, lend ground for hope? To keep the 4 in balance, what is then the key? Best elemental emblems, fervor be your sun, and tears your rain. Plant seed of thought. When that is done, await the fruitful harvest. Should it come, you'll see enthusiasm being born in nature signs. Recall the lover heart as mountain, one divines a double summit. Love and hate will yet progress by questioning and answer, past a doubleness. That obstacles appear we wouldn't dare deny. The insensate boy we know is dartful and won't die. You know whom I'm talking about, don't you? That's Cupid. Dartful. I love to make up words now and then, and here I'm answering. I sometimes think regarding old religious art, the chubby winged babes that grace a painted scene in portraits of a holy family serene, obscure a fact that myth tradition may impart. The little boy of love, sly Cupid, is the son of Venus and of Mars, of passion and of war. Her blacksmith husband Vulcan couldn't lock the door. She'd leave him when she pleased, and freedom thus had won. And so the son of joy is joined with saddened tears. But breathing deeply, if the bliss of love you plant, a feast you'll celebrate as lover Hierophant. Hot, cold, wet, dry, in world life balanced as in you, a fourfold elemental presence will endue with bliss the heart that feels how amor's gift endears. Amor is the Latin word for love and another name for Cupid, or eros in Greek. And now I think I'll read you for my last offering, dialogue number 5. This has the interesting title, Insensate, that is, unmindful, uncaring, oblivious. Now why do we the boy of love insensate call? I find 2 ways that he has demonstrated this. The senses he, disordering, negating bliss, may captivate, entrap, and so at length appall. A man more sense-directed quickly he'll distract, but one more speculative, intellectual, he'll differently strike, fill mental powers full of new acute alertness that will soon have racked the brain with acrimony, animosity, for, in a word, suspicion newly comes to be. Indignant now, to model virtue one aspires. 'Twill justify investigative, sly desires. The higher and the lower are alike ensnared. Insensible we're made to whither we have fared. Love poses major perils to both the heart and the brain, and he's going to face them all. That's what's meant by being, what does the subtitle say, a participant in the heroic enthusiasms. And now my reply. Our varied powers and distinct capacities communicate. We find them mirroring each other. So intellect is passion's emulative brother, and if the heart be roused, more thinking life one sees, our 100 billion brain cells waking into act, though speculations on the friend's fidelity a nightmare yelp of a frenzied fancy proved to be, and often unsupported by a single fact. Suspicion looks beneath, and moved by theories that may appear to promise triumph to the mind, is prey to hidden fears, for torment well designed. The dart electrifies the lover's life entire, unless he'll click delete, the system to rewire. Computers, when corrupted, overheat, then freeze.